So, I need to review my notes for the Rangsk layout, which I believe were linked to this puzzle as a example. Or just on the page rather than left, it always takes up exactly the same screen. Real estate. Regardless of puzzle size or outside clues, problems is this one. Alright, let us get the local version of that. Also, welcome to the stream. Hello, everybody. Let's make sure we are streaming. And it looks like we are streaming. Are we live on YouTube? I believe we are. Hey, Rangsk. Oh, I don't have this puzzle locally. Syncing my local version of the puzzle database is actually something I haven't fully built out yet. I think if I sync the file version of the API, it should fall back to that, and I should have a script for that. I'm kind of in the middle of a couple of things. Sync. Which one is the sync? Where are the sync scripts? Sync, fetch API. Oh, fetch API production should be all I need at the moment. That should do the trick. I'm just reviewing, so you've sent me images in the past, and I don't know where I've put them. So I'm just gonna pull them from the chat. So we have this as the before, and this. I already started work on this a couple streams ago, so we have from this to this. And as an example, I think I should be able to just grab like something like this, and then I'll get the local version. Right. And maybe if I zoom it down, I just want to see if I can, if I do this and give it less space, we can get a bit of an example here going. And now I think this was the script. Hey, Mark. Hey, sorry about sending work your way lately, but I had to admit to my girlfriend that I feel kind of good sending work your way because it makes you the closest person to understand my mental state. So when I tell people, oh, you know, Mark can fix that in the importer. So I'm sorry if I spread the misery around a little bit. Sorry about that. At least you can, you know, not do it if you want to. Okay, this is not part of it. This, let's move it over there. That was the settings stuff. My god, I cannot have so many unsaved things in untitled files. I am gonna lose things. This is so terrible. In fact, I'm gonna move this down here into this endless list of unsaved tabs that if I ever lose them, it's gonna be the end of me. All right. So I think this did some of that. No, it didn't. It started to, and I had to stop because something finished. I think I ran out of time. I don't know if that was on a stream, but I ran out of time. Okay, so the thing I was missing in the end was to counteract some kind of transform, and unfortunately I left it in a place where it's invisible, which means mentally it's going to be very hard for me to figure out what was going on here. All right, if I don't do that, and if I just do that, what does that look like? All right, it's gone. And I think I actually don't need that because I can just refresh that. So if I do this, that's also gone. So that wasn't it. Oh dear, I should have left some notes to myself. Okay, I think that does one part of it. Let us move all of these into their own little place so I can do that. And this should, does this load now? Yes. So yay for the file fallback. Nope. Sweet. All right, so, and we don't need this right now. So we can just do this. And if I run this again, okay, so that does the vertical. And does it do the scaling? Yes. Yes. We might have an issue with the top margin because the puzzle... No, the margin seems to be correct. Okay. So that's the vertical. Okay, so so vertical, okay. I'm gonna remove that now, so we're only looking at one. So I needed to reverse engineer the scaling, because I think one of the issues I had was... I think I wanted to scale with the scale of that, but because it's inside a thing, which is inside a thing, which is inside a thing, I need to inverse the scale twice, I believe. So this has a transform scale on it. No, actually I only have one scale. Right. So I need to invert the scale, I think, one time for like a margin. I want the margin without the scale, and I want the size with the scale or something. I don't know. So we were looking at getting it right aligned, I think, was the next step. So that's why this one is on the X, but I tried to do it on the whole CO element. So if I do that... it's gone. But if I look at... CO would be the controls, right? Where are these? They are 480, 659, and if I refresh, they are 480, 438. Wait. I think one of the problems might be that we might be overwriting a transform. Oop, no, not to be safe that. Handle resize. The problem is we already have a transform here. So BT is the transform of the B board element. But this has its own, the controls have their own transform. Is that the problem? All right, so they have a scale, but it should be this, it's a different scale. We're scaling it differently. Ooh, I forgot about that. Okay. All right, CO element. CT is the scale transform. Okay. So if we output the CT data... Oh, no. I keep wanting to save it. There's nothing to be saved. There's no saving. And if I resize... Alright, it gives me that data. Right. And I should be able to do something like this. And I'll say something like, let a new transform equals... So we have a translate... px. That's the x, that's the y. That's the transform, and then we have a scale. And that gets us a scale in here. And then we should be able to do something like... CO transform. Go from here to here. Right? That should work. And then we're gonna move that above here, and that's just gonna be the new transform, and that should be that, right? Oh. CT.x, CT.y, and CT.scale. So my little helper function here basically pulls out the coordinates and stuff, converts them from pixel units to numbers, gets the scale number out from a float, and basically decodes the CSS scale format. And now we're changing it, but keeping it the same. Okay. So the next step is to change it, but more different, right? So now the translate needs to be, what were we trying before? X. So what is the X? So if we put this in here, we have a different X. It goes from that to that. Very large X. So that's obviously not right. Oh, but we're using that for the Y calculation. No, that's X calculation. So bounds GA element dot width. Alright, let's not do this for a sec. Let's output some more information here. What else we got here? We have bounds GA. Bounds GA. Well, dot width. Let's just do that, right? Dot width. So that should get us whatever's in here. We want to get ct dot scale, and then y minus 200. Okay, so that's kind of where we want to place it, huh? So it's 1278. How did we end up with this number, though? This is divided by CT scale. No, it needs to be multiplied? Wait, does it? GA element, so that's dot game, which is above the scale. But we're going to be inside the scaled part. So maybe it needs to be multiplied by scale? Let's try it out. Programming by guessing. Maybe. Maybe. If I do that. The problem is, it's inside game, but it's inside board. No, it's not scaled at all. So maybe we just don't scale it. Nope. Apparently not. Oh, because it's relative to its current position. God damn it. If I do this, right, it starts at 9. So the current position would be the 0 point. Oh, yeah, okay, so that's the problem. So we either calculate relative to its position, which changes as we're moving this, right? Which could be really complicated, but it's doable. Or we're trying to change what it is positioned relative to, right? So the problem with that is because I'm relying on the CSS like flex and stuff, so I cannot just position it absolute because I'm relying on the flex to do other things. So I would have to reverse engineer its actual position, which is relative to the board, except it isn't really. So right now, is it split down the middle? Not exactly. So we have a flex. Oh my god, okay, so the left position here is on the right edge of the board. The problem is I don't know where the board actually is, right? So if I don't translate or transform the board, it's here. And if I don't transform or translate that, it's here. Does that mean it's always the center line? So in this case, it's definitely not the center line, right? It's not the center line. So we have flex. So it's whatever the width of the board is. Right. In its unscaled... Is it in its unscaled place? Except right now, you see, it's no longer there. Oh, it is. It's just, that's where, is that the width it would be if the board wouldn't be scaled? Wait, if I do this a 2D scale like that. Like that. Is this the width of the board for being scaled? Is that what's happening? Maybe? Alright, we could go with that. Let's try it. So, the board is here. BT is the board transform. The problem is we don't actually explicitly... no, we can get the bounds of the board, right? So we can say... we can get a board... Is that enough? 375. Is that our theoretical position, right? Damn it. Oh, no, we can just get the position of this thing, wherever it is right now. The problem is, after the translate... Well, we'll just redo it, right? Every time we resize, it'll get reset, and then we can get its position again and we do it. There might be flickering, we'll deal with that later. So, we can get the bounds of the CO element here. And that should give us a real position on it, right? Once again, don't save it. It's nothing to save. So that gets us an X here, right? And we want to put it to an X of 1078, right? So we want to subtract that from that, right? So if we do this, we're gonna say we're gonna say X equals, we'll do this, this dot X minus that minus 200. Right? If we do that here, what does that look like? Huh? Not a number. Okay, wait. Dot X. Okay, and if we do it instead of minus 200, we do it minus that dot width. Now, this might not be in the right scale. Or it might be. Okay. And we've done the Y already. So that's actually our X here. So instead of doing that as the X... but the Y is on the CI. Because we don't want to move all of it. Okay. Let's see how that works. Yeah. I think that's what Rangsk wanted. Right? I compare this to this. The controls are in the same spot. Everything is the same scale. Okay, now the big problem is he wants this centered. But of course, these things aren't currently scaling accordingly. So if I center that right now, it'll overlap on these guys, right? So that only works at our scale when they're small enough. What I could do is I can align the right edge of this the same way as these guys are, right? So in other words, I'll move it over by the same amount, which wouldn't necessarily center it, unfortunately. What I probably need to do is I need to center it unless it conflicts with that. Except what he probably wants then, he wants this to still be centered and he wants this to get scaled down, which that would be almost like a rebuild of the scaling mechanism with new boundary conditions. So right now, this is where it's at. And we're moving it over by this much. This is where we're... X is this, right? Because that's what we're getting from bounds. And then the transform becomes... X minus that. Can I... So if I take this formula, right? So we'll have an A minus B minus C, and we want to pull B out of it. So we want to know what factor is B modified by, right? So we can add B on both. So if we say this is equals 0, right? So we can add B on both sides. So A minus C equals B. So B is A minus C. No, that's not how it works, right? No, we want X here. Then X plus B is that, right? Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But given that, it's probably better if I start from the grid perspective first. Which is probably the right thing to do. At least with these, I have something already, and I have a little bit of an understanding. Let me think. So, currently, the problem right now is it's relying on the flex algorithm. And if I change that fundamentally... Well, what I can do... I can find where the grid is, first of all. So we know that the grid is at the bounds of board, right? BO element. Like that. So if I run that here... So we know where it is, right? And we know that is absolute relative to the total screen, I'm guessing. So if we want to center that, we need to offset it by a certain amount. But, of course, we also have... so these are the bounds. But we also have a transform, right? And the transform, I think we have already extracted. BT. Excuse me. So, if I do this... So our transform is minus 304. And I basically need to say, okay, how do I need to modify the transform to get the new position, which is the... And let's do this. Is the bounce of the game centered relative to that, right? So if I do this, right? So this is our width. So we want the center of the thing be there. And these should all be in top level coordinates, except maybe not. I don't know if these are relative to scaling. So we might have to... oh my god, okay, my brain hurting. This is probably simple math. It's like add 3 numbers together, right? It's just which are the numbers. So first of all, can I modify the transform to be at 0, right? So if I want this to be at 0, I need the transform to be thus in such a... Wait, well, we're at 307. We have an x... We have a transform of minus 304 on the x. We have a position of 307. And that's... So this is the 307, and we have a transform of minus 304. X is 307 with the 0. Is that a coincidence? Okay, that was a weird coincidence. Yeah, alright. That was freaking me out. if I look at the x alone, if I subtract that from our x here, does that mean we would have... does that mean we would basically set it to 0? So what's a transform on board here? So we have... the transform is translate and scale. Oh, but the translate currently is in percent. Oh, my brain. Okay. Well, let's see. If I take the transform of the board and I'll set it to something like this, right? Let's leave that the same for now. And this will be bt.scale. We'll keep the scale the same. And if I set this to 0, just get my head around these numbers. So instead of minus 307, right? So we do that, we do that. Now the x is 0. And where is it? Because we shouldn't have modified the y. X, y, right? Minus 100. Minus 200. Minus 300. That doesn't do the trick. That is bizarre because it was set to 50%, but it comes out as negative 300. Translate. Wait a second, this is not right. So BT is minus 304. So if I set this to minus 304, it should be very close to the original value. Except it's possible that that the percentage oh, this is supposed to be minus 50. I got it wrong on the Y, didn't I? I got it wrong on the Y. Alright, so if I do this set 0... Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking for, except no. Alright, because now the X, yada yada, the width, blah blah blah, okay. Oh, my head. I feel like I should have a function that gives me the absolute location and sets the absolute location, right? Because right now it just sets it to 0, which just means it adds 300 to it. But we don't know if that's where we want it, right? So we want to know... what I can do is I can figure out where it is, and I can figure out where it should be. Right. So, and let's put this in very simple language to work with my sleep-deprived simple brain. Console.log, where it is, and it is currently, and let's just go by its X position, right? So where is it? It is the bounds.x, right? Where it should be is the bounds of the game plus the width divided by 2. Right? The bounds of the game width plus the bounds of the board width divided by 2. Something like that. Right? That's where it should be. So it should be at 757. So we can calculate the difference and just add that. Right? So let delta x equal this. Let car x equals this. Let next x equals equals this. Boom. Delta x equals next x minus car x. God damn it, double cursor. Next x minus car x. Alright. What does that look like? Delta x, 374. So we should have to just add that to the transform. So we can just do this. And we just do the current transform, bt.x plus delta x, and just round it. Right? Math.round. And that's probably not it. Is this... Because it seems to be off by its own width. Right? I'm not crazy. It's off by its own width. Do I subtract this? I think I might have to subtract this. That looks pretty middle. That looks pretty mid. Let's try it out on something that's a little off. Okay. Okay. Now the problem is, if I just push the controls over, the controls may not fit. Although I'm not messing with the scale. Right? Yeah. So the controls might overlap. Which for Rangsk's purposes probably isn't a problem. But in reality, what I would want is the scaling algorithm to help with that, right? Because we kind of don't want that. The question is, at this point, I'm kind of rebuilding the scaling algorithm. Basically, okay, so what I can do is I can say how wide the controls are and how wide I want them to be. And I could say maximum width this. And I can kind of play the same game again. So we can say, yeah. So let's get rid of that. And we say, and we do that before the transform. So console.log, how wide are controls, right? So current W equals, the current width equals bounds game element bounds control element dot width. So it's kind of this. Right, and how wide do we want them to be? We want them to be the width of let next W equals basically the right edge of the board, the distance of the right edge of the board from the edge of the game. So the right edge of the board right now would be bounds board element, and you know we'll clean up this bounds element X plus width subtracted from the total board, and the margins we could actually pull out of, like we could find the margins earlier by basically doing the calculation before we apply our algorithm, right? So you could see where the board should start relative to this, right? So actually, let's do that. We have our three groups. Let's hope we don't get them confused again. But now we're labeling things a little bit better. So we can say, okay, relative to the board edge, where do we want the controls to start? So we can say, console.log board right edge, and that would be bounds board dot x plus bounds board dot width So that's where whatever rightmost part of the board is. And now we want to find out relative to that where the control's left edge is. So we can do bounds controls element X. X. And I think this resolves all the scaling stuff. I think. So our difference here would be whatever. The difference between these two. So it's really that minus that. Right? So it's 14 point blah blah blah, right? And if we maintain that, and by scaling, so it gets up to 37 on this bigger scale, and then it goes down to 5. Okay. Yeah, so... so current... yeah. So we can say let padding equal... let... board to controls padding equals this. Boom. Right. Then the next width is the X position of the board plus the width of the board plus the padding minus all of this subtracted from the width of the entire game. Right? Then how wide controls should be. Right, and that should be the next W. If I do this here, we get 607. How wide controls are 357. How wide controls should be 607. So that's not right. That is not right. But we need to calculate that before we do this or after. Now we do it after we move the board. Yeah, let's not move the controls for a sec. Let's make sure that still holds true. How wide controls should be. Yeah, so that doesn't make sense. Bounds board plus bounds width plus controls to padding. Minus... so this should be a fairly small number. Okay, let's output these. Make sure I'm not confusing myself again. Let's actually pull the padding out separately for a sec. And then we'll get these two. So if I do this, controls padding is negative. So I think the padding needs to be so the padding needs to be calculated first before we move anything. Okay, so maybe that was the problem. So, the board position plus width is 800. So the right edge of the board should be 821. And then these two, now, maybe, should make sense. So controls should be wider. Now, obviously, we're gonna be able to just say this is a maximum or minimum or whatever, right? So if we get to this, yeah. So now the controls are wider than, smaller than that. So we'll rescale the controls once we hit that problem. Ideally. So now, how wide controls should be 425. Yeah, we're not gonna make the controls bigger. But now they need to be smaller. And if they need to be smaller, we need to change the scale and the translate, which is gonna be a little bit tricky. But what we could do is substitute our next W in here for now. So without scaling it, we're just going to pretend it's already been scaled. Then at least the left edge should be correct. So now the left edge should never... Okay. Okay. Except it doesn't work in both directions, right? Yeah, it shouldn't work in this direction. So we need to do a min-max kind of situation here. So controls are how wide they should be. How wide they are, how wide they should be. So we want the min of those. So we do math.min of current width and next width. Right? So if we go smaller, they stay. If they go bigger, they get pushed off. And now if we accordingly scale them... Okay, and the problem is we already have a scaling ratio, and now we need to multiply another scaling ratio on top of it. So, log new scale, and that'll be car w, or yeah, next w is actually this. So, math.min this or that, whichever is the lesser. And I think we can just now do something like this. And then this should be just next w. And we should be able to use that for calculations down here. Right. So it's always gonna be smaller. The smaller of the two, right. And then the new scale is 1 divided by the other. So it'll be 1 or smaller. So next W will be smaller. So if they're the same, it becomes 1. If we want it smaller, we need to do next W divided by this. Right? So new scale 0.79. So at best it's 1. Okay. So if we multiply it by this... and I think I might have to demultiply the scale first or something. I don't know. Okay, so it gets bigger. And then it gets smaller. The problem is... we're using the scale in here, and now we've changed the scale. Right. Which affects our X and Y's. I'm just thinking, do I apply the scale first and then redo the thing, or does that affect everything recursively? Because what I could do is I could apply the scale first. So first of all, let's get rid of the new t here. We don't need that. If I skip this step, it's just the vertical, right? Yeah. The only problem is the controls get... Well, no, this is not a problem. The controls get smaller because I have to, because otherwise they don't fit. Okay. So now maybe this needs to be calculated after the fact, because it's using the new scale and so on and so forth. So this X is not being used anywhere here. So we can get rid of this, right? So this we don't need, right? We just have a let X here. I do that. Let X. Right. Do that. Yeah. So let's comment some things so I don't go crazy some other day. Grab padding between board and controls. Move board to center. Find new width to fit controls. to on right margin. Move and scale controls. Now, I think our CI update here should happen after this because it uses the scales, right? So we don't need that anymore. That is a separate step now underneath. Move and scale control. Move. Move controls. Controls horizontally. Now, vertically, the scale matters as well. But the scale is determined. So the verticality at the moment doesn't affect the scale, even though it kind of should. But I think the board takes care of that for us already. All right, we're getting close. We're getting close. Okay, and now move controls vertically. And now this part will actually go down there and get calculated after all the other stuff. Without any weird caching bollocks and all this. CO top. Okay, that's constant. CO margin, constant. CT get transfer. CT needs to be updated now. BT, and CT. So those aren't constants, huh? Get transform. And the Y was set. Did I remove? No, here. Now that's no longer okay. Because now the Y is affected by the scale differently. But if we recalculate these now, before we're doing all that, that should do the trick, right? Yeah. What I don't know is, does he want the puzzle top aligned? I don't know if you're still there, Rangsk. So let's see. The rules for the top right justified. That is fine. Important thing is the top of the title rules is always in exactly the same location. So I think that would be the case here. The problem is it won't be the same scale. Consistent width. Well, the problem is it depends on the size of the puzzle, right? Because you cannot have the consistent width without overlap. Hey, Rangsk. So one of the issues that I have is because you're mentioning a consistent width for the title. The problem with that is that depending on the size of the puzzle and the size of your window, if I always make the title the same scale, they will overlap with the puzzle. So right now, basically, I've maintained the current algorithm for scaling, but with your new constraints about positioning. But it means that, for example, as the puzzle gets bigger, eventually the controls need to shrink. Otherwise, they'll start overlapping the puzzle. Now, the other thing I'm not sure is if you want the puzzle top aligned. The rules are top right justified. Control should be the fixed location bottom right, which allows me to avoid capturing some. So you'd rather have the controls not centered relative to the puzzle. So we can move the controls always to the bottom right as well. Do you want the puzzle always top aligned? The size of the puzzle. The problem is if the puzzle gets bigger. Actually, no, because it's already accounting for that. The puzzle always fits in a sort of square space. Do you want the puzzle to be top aligned? Or do you want the puzzle to be centered? Or do you want it to be top centered? And then the last step is I'll make the controls bottom aligned. Let me work on the bottom alignment of the controls while you... It can center vertically. Okay, so let me do the controls bottom aligned. What is currently determining the position of the controls, though? So we have the controls. So the controls currently have... I think they basically just have a space for the... So the controls are... So we need to change the height of the controls, except not the height, but the spacing taken up by the controls info block. So we actually need to change the control info block height, because the other stuff just flows after that, right? Or we just, so if I say margin bottom 100 px, so I can move it down by that much. So let's see where the bottom is, and we'll play the same game, where the bottom is. This sounds wrong, and where it should be. So console.log where controls, where bottom of controls is. So that would be, at this point, it'll be CT, no, it'll be this dot y plus dot height, right? Right? That should be it. Where the bottom of controls is. Okay. Now, I cannot automatically extract the margin for it, but I think a margin of 0 is okay. There's some minimum margin included somewhere. Let's see what it would look like with 0, what it should look like with 0. So it'll be the bounds of the game. Height, dot height, that's it, right? I think that's it. Without having to scroll, okay. Alright, we'll look into that afterwards. Where bottom of controls is, where bottom of controls should be. So like this, where bottom of controls is, so 493 versus 465. What is the delta here? Console.log min bottom margin padding, actually. So we'll do that minus these things, minus these things. And then we can actually find out what the margin is and if it changes according to... did I grab a bracket from somewhere? Bounce, CO. I think I just hit a key there. All right. Minimum bot margin 28. The game element height should be... Wait, what? Oh, the game is... okay, we want X plus height, okay. So I forget that we have... horizontally, we can just look at the game. Vertically, we have the toolbar at the top, so we need to make sure we kind of calculate everything properly. So currently, the minimum bottom is 9.10, 11 minimum bottom. So by the time it touches, it keeps changing, but I think the change is relative to the scale. So if I multiply this whole thing, if I take this whole thing and I multiply it by the control scale, not the board scale, is that consistent then? If I divide it by the control scale? 23, 22, 21, 21.6. No. If I divide it by the board scale, it might be a combination of both. It's probably not important, but obviously it is consistent here, and the change comes from the change in scale. Minimum bottom padding. Where bottom of control is. Wait, what if we don't do any of the other stuff for a hot second here? So now, where bottom of control is, where bottom should be, 11, 13, so it grows bigger, it grows smaller, The question is, does it grow with transform or does it grow with EM height? Because it could literally be just not actually transform scaling, although we do have scaling happening here. 16, 16, 16. 6.7. It's relatively consistent, but it's up and down by like a couple of tenths of a pixel. I'm probably worrying about the wrong thing though. So instead of doing that, let's go back to our partial implementation here. Remind ourselves exactly how it works currently. Okay. So we want to, for now, we're just going to add a margin to this, but later on we work on actually changing the height of that. So for now, we just do a margin because it's just easier to implement. So we have these two. Boom. Where it should be. So we'll do let delta bot equals where it should be minus where it is. And if they're the same, delta bot will be 0. Right? So if we do this, put that in there, our delta bot will be, well, it'll be the margin, basically. And then it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. And now we can add that to the bottom padding. Can I just make it higher? What if I say bottom 0 px? I don't think it'll do anything, right? Controls, info, bottom 0. I don't think that'll work. Yeah. All right, so controls info. I think we have a selector for that. So let's just add a margin to that. Dot margin bottom equals. Now this might be a runaway situation. Because math.round, because I'm not taking into consideration the existing margin, and I don't know exactly where it comes from. It's some part of the CSS algorithm. Margin bottom. Is that not... It's growing, but it's not growing fast enough. In fact, it's growing quite small, quite slowly. Background red. Boom. The problem is, outline 10 px solid magenta. The problem is it doesn't go around the margin. Okay, if we don't do the repositioning on this thing, will that show us our margin? All right, then go down. Yeah, I think this needs to be scaled by, you know, scale. Because the margin is inside the transformed element, right? So we need to detransformify it. Which is ct.scale, right? So if I divide that by that, it's like multiplying by the inverse, right? Ooh, and it just it will bounce. It will bounce. We'll clean that up later. Because then hopefully mathematically we can just figure out all the numbers and then just set them once. All right, let's restart. Can I just start from the beginning of this playlist? Play all. Really? I'm not signed. Why am I not signed in here? I don't want to see ads. Jeez. Oh, I'm live streaming. How can I not be signed in? This is hilarious. I mean, it's annoying. Can we skip this one? Right. Right, now I'm signed in. Why was I not signed in on this tab? Okay, never mind, never mind. Okay, so that does sort of do the thing. Ah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Where the button of controls is. If I do this, does it actually put it in a new place? Where the bottom of controls is 729. Where the bottom of controls is? Where the bottoms of controls should be 873. Delta bottom. Delta bottom. Ah, but I need to set the margin bottom to 0 first before I do this. So if I do this, 0, and then I do the calculations. In fact, I'll probably have to do it right at the start. Before I calculate any of this other stuff. I think. Shit. Shoot. Yeah. Okay, so we don't want to use the bottom margin to do that change. We want to do it via transforms, right? Because the problem is the next time we do a resize, it will affect all of that, right? But we know we have permission to increase the rules size, so we can just make the rules bigger. The problem is we probably don't want the rules to be bigger than they need to be. So that's a little bit of, you know. So I don't know how the rule size is determined here. Is it by max? And in fact, I'm gonna need something with more rules. I think I'm gonna use this one then. Because I don't know if the rules are determined by some sort of max height. Yeah. Okay. So we then kind of want to change the max height. Yeah, because then if it's higher, I mean, if the rules are shorter, it shouldn't screw us. Okay. Do we have puzzle rules here in the selector? No. So let's do that. Controls info, controls info. Dot puzzle rules. All right, so PR. Yeah. So let us skip this for a sec. And just do this. We'll get the bounds. No, we get style dot max. If I get max height, I think it'll give me the actual value, which is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the max height undefined. PR element puzzle rules. Max height undefined. What? Isn't that the syntax? Capitalization instead of dashification? Or am I getting this wrong? I feel like I'm missing something here. Do I have to get... I'll have to go computed style, right? Get computed style. There we go. Get computed style. Does that work? 2 to 4. All right. I think that'll work. So that's good because instead of giving us the REM value, it gives us actually the pixel value, right? Change the max height on the change also need to. Yeah, all right. But now we want to set the max height to a specific value. The only issue is that the max height alone isn't gonna solve our entire problem yet. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. To be honest, the max height is almost independent of that problem, which is the bottom positioning of that and how we're gonna accomplish that. Because we still need to increase the space this takes up. And the problem is we need to do it with something that doesn't affect the flow, because otherwise it'll accumulate over multiple resizes, which is what we'd had before because we changed the padding. So we need to translate that into a transform. The problem is these elements, there's multiple of these. So probably what we should do is actually, since this is the only thing that's top aligned, we should position the whole thing to the bottom first, and then only this to the top. Yeah. So right now, we're not doing any. Okay, so first actually let's do the bottom aligning. So where bottom of controls is and where it should be, let's get those back into action. Right, where bottom controls should be 413. So they're pretty close to where they are and where they should be. And then we'll just add that into the translate for the entire controls. So maybe we'll do that here. So we'll do let y equals and we're just gonna hide this here for a sec. So it's ct.y relative to the transform. So we need to make it transform relative again, like we did earlier. So CT, so 97. So the delta between these two, we need to add to that. So let next y or y equal. So we had the delta bottom before. So it's basically one of these minus the other one, right? So we have the bottom of the controls. So we have the bottom of the game minus bottom of controls, right? And, you know, GA bot equals that. And let CO bot equal that. And yeah, we'll clean that up later. Don't worry. Don't worry. So game bottom minus control bottom. But we need to find the delta, right? We need to add that to this. So it's this plus this. And then we'll just put that in here. Right? And it's a bit too low, obviously. We'll add the padding back in. Except it does a weird thing with the scale. Because this is not... does it... Yeah. Which part is inside what? Because we have two scales, right? We have that separate... The controls are scaled independently of the board. We have a board scale and we have a control scale, right? And, I'm just trying to think. If I if I want to have a consistent delta here, do we divide it by the scale? Is that... Because we didn't do any of that here. Math. So we have... So if we say let delta y equals these, right? That's basically what we did here. And then we'll do basically what we did here. So we can say ct.y plus delta y. Right. But we already know that doesn't quite work. It gets changed by the scaling. Because where bottom of control should be. Now, if I write where bottoms of control are afterwards, does that align with where bottom of control should be? Where bottom of controls is where bottom of controls should be got. Just so I know. So we got 2633. Okay. Now if I go here, is 789 should be 820 got 761. That's not right. And is that because we're changing something else at the same time? Or is it because we haven't updated the CT here? I mean, we haven't changed anything before here, so... BT. Let me pull the variables out because I'm gonna confuse myself. So let CT BT. So we'll just say BT equals this just before we're using it. So it's fresh. And we'll do the same thing here. CT equals that. Fresh, right? So now if once it scales up, these don't work out anymore, even though the math should work out. Because we have a CT, we have a 162 here. Bottom control, it should be, oh, yeah, no. A bit confusing and spammy. 748, you see, the delta here doesn't quite work out. Why is that? These are freshly calculated and they should take into consideration scaling. We are changing the scale though. Ouch. So we have to do a two-step? Oh, my brain hurts. So what we could do is we could first change the scale and then recalculate the y. But in theory, there's a mathematical integration differentiation thing that we can do, right? So what we can do is pre-multi/divide by new scale, right? So next W current W. So we can do let next scale equals... And we need the CT before all of this. So CT goes here. This becomes next scale. Next scale. Right. Now the problem is we don't need the next scale, we need the delta scale. So we'll do scale delta scale, which is this. Oop. This. Right. And we'll do scale equals that times delta scale. And we'll do math dot... Or we'll just do 2 fixed 3. 2 fixed 3. Right. We don't need next scale. So just double checking I haven't broken it in a weird way. Because I'm just trying things. Alright. And now... We need to delta scale what though? Not the board, because that doesn't change. This, probably. So if we take that and we'll multiply that by delta scale, we might have to divide. I'm not trying to figure this out ahead of time. It's so close. Maybe. The only annoying thing is that our actual position isn't correct yet either. Shh, this feels weird. Controls bottom. I think maybe it's the delta y that we need to multiply by delta scale. So if we do this... Yeah, getting closer. I call it programming by trial and error. You know, you're probably yelling that half of this is already good enough for your purposes, but I'm actually trying... I've been trying to fix the layout system for so long that by doing this, by basically reverse engineering it from the outside, because every time I try it from the inside, I waste 2 days and then I give up. And then I'll add like a counter how many hours wasted in this place in the code, you know. But by doing it this way, I can actually reverse engineer it pure, like clean, from the outside, and then maybe that'll help me to actually build a layout system on it. Because unfortunately, some of it depends on CSS stuff to kind of do some of the heavy lifting, and I should try to step away from that and just do everything myself. It would make my life so much easier. So right now, the moment we're scaling that, our bottom changes. But should be. Yeah, you see the got and the should be do not line up after we apply it. So, first of all, this we don't need. So we got this. So we've got this as the new bottom. And you see the bottom didn't become what it ought to have become. Now the delta y, we're multiplying it by the scale. The x works and we don't care about it. Delta scale, delta y. I think I tried this right, didn't I? God damn it. There is a number, like a combination of these variables that is 100% accurate at all times, right? It's possible that the scale needs to be on the inside here and only affect the part that changes because the board doesn't get its scale changed in this part. Ooh. Wait. This looks... No. Wait. This is not doing what I think it should. What? I think something is looping infinitely. Yeah, the console crashed in a weird way here. Okay, now this looks like it's doing the opposite of what we want, right? Yeah. So if I multiply this, and then, like, I just want the bottom of this be rock solid and controllable. It's so close. It's so close. It's so close. It's so very close. It is so very close. Oh, my brain, my brain. I mean, I could descale everything, normalize it, and then rescale everything. But I don't really want to do that either. Oh, wait a second. Do we need to delta scale the current Y in the transform as well? We might have to. Maybe that's what we need to do. Let next Y equal... Let's pull that out of there. We'll put next Y in here. See what that looks like. Oh my god. That's so close. That's so close. So close. If we say the bottom is something plus a margin, right? So we currently have the CO margin. Do we need to... Where it should be is that. Do we need to pre-multiply that by the scale? Not sure. If I do this, and I'll do CY, if I put that in here, make that next Y. If I take that, you know, let's keep a copy of this because it's so close. I can smell it. Okay, so that's completely wrong. Minus that. So that plus that minus that is correct. But I wasn't combining the terms correctly. Oh man, I wish I had paid more attention in algebra. Yeah, so wait, how do I get these rearranged? If I say, if I put that in brackets, right, and I'll add that all together. And then I can just put that in the front. And I'll do that, right? That should be all... That should be the same, right? Yeah. So if I take these two now, and I can do that, right? That's still algebra. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Now if I multiply that by delta scale, and I probably should pre-multiply just for mathematical congruency. Okay. And now if I subtract the margin, the problem is the margin now is unscaled. Ooh. Yeah, you see the margin gets bigger the smaller things are. So the margin needs to be scaled by the existing scale, I think. So if I do this divided by that... Oh, nope. Nope, nope, no. If I multiply it? Yeah, I don't want it to shrink. Oh, man. I want a fixed margin from the bottom. The problem is, we already don't have a fixed margin from the bottom, so I'm not sure what's actually going on. One thing I can try is, if I step one back and change delta scale to 1, and in fact, if I don't do this next W thing at all... Actually, if I just say delta scale equals 1, right? If I do that, then we don't have the scaly thing, right? So now, if I have a fixed margin, as the text gets smaller, the margin will look bigger. But it is potentially something we are okay with. Now, if I multiply the margin by ct.scale, then the margin will look like it's getting smaller, I believe, even though it's staying the same. No, then the margin will look like it's consistent. Except it's still not super... You see, these don't match up. Probably because I didn't include the margin in the should be part of this equation. So, GA bottom is where it should be. And CO bottom is where it currently is. And where it should be is minus the margin over here. Like that. So I do this. Now the is and should and got to should exactly align. Except it doesn't. Why is that? 260. I mean, it's really close. I don't know if you guys can even see that. I'm wondering if the rules should be top justified to the puzzle. Controls bottom. I mean, that depends on your streaming setup, right? Because in your streaming setup, I'm assuming things are relative to the window rather than the puzzle. So if the puzzle changes up and down, your streaming setup, I don't know if it would adjust to that. Now, it probably doesn't matter because you probably don't resize the window while you're streaming. And it really only kind of matters when the puzzle has extreme verticality or extreme horizontality. The thing. Now, the problem right now is I still cannot get... So basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, after the transformation, these two numbers should be the same. They currently are not, which isn't right. So there's something is not multiplying through correctly. Like, we have a delta scale, right? Where bottom of control got to. So we have the bottom. We want the bottom to be this number. And we're doing this by doing what exactly? We're taking this, and then we're adding delta scale times that. We're adding delta. The negative of that minus the current the current transform, which also needs to be multiplied by, but delta scale is 1 right now, so that doesn't matter, right? So the current transform y, which I believe is either 50% or it's something else, right? But we don't care. We want to maintain it. We don't want to change that. So we're subtracting the bottom from that, which should just give us the delta bottom, basically. But one of these changes scale. Is it though? No, wait. We're not changing scale at all. If I was gonna say if I set the but I'm not setting it. I'm setting the transform. The translate of the transform. 92p, and that's not helping with my thinking. Yeah, I understand, but part of me thinks it depends on your capture setup, right? If your capture setup, or like let's say you have your webcam set to cover the controls or whatever, right? Then the controls being attached to the edge of the window probably is more useful rather than relative to the puzzle. Now, for you, it's probably good enough because your layout is probably such that it's either one will probably work. But I'm also looking like I want to be in charge of this thing. I don't want this to be jerking me around like this. I wanna be able to say, hey, I wanna my mouse cursor and I click, and I want then the bottom of that be there, right? Because in the future, not in the future, I've been for freaking years. I've always wanted to have where you have a little handle, like a layout modified mode, and then you get a handle and you can just drag it and place it where you want, and it just locally stores that information, right? And right now it's bugging me that I cannot get the bottom of this to be the number that I'm trying it to be, right? So I'm saying it currently is 647. It should be 643. So I'm trying to apply a transformation. Wait. Yeah, I get 643, but 0.53 instead of 0.23. Now, that might be a small issue. I am rounding stuff. Is it because I'm rounding things? Please don't tell me it's because I'm rounding things. What if I don't round things? What if I don't round things? Maybe then the numbers will be identical. The numbers are identical, right? Okay, so now the numbers are identical. Okay. The round is wrong, got me. All right, so if I change the delta scale, so now I want it to be scale invariant as well. 581952 334208 yeah, so here it falls apart. 111 versus 1133. So I am not applying the inverse scale correctly, but I am changing the scale to be fixed here. If I don't do that, should be 823 9. Yeah, so here it gets smaller. So when the scale is 1, obviously it works. So here it still doesn't quite work, and I've removed any rounding and approximations and all that stuff. So let's see. So this terminology here is not correct. Let us output what delta scale actually is. Just to see, because if the delta scale is within kind of our margin of error, then it could, yeah, it's... Delta scale is... It doesn't go too far away from 1. So it makes the number smaller. And makes our difference bigger. And if I divide by delta scale, so I multiply by 0.9 whatever. 920 should be 1161. Yeah, so that's completely wrong. Wait, we have multiplied CT times. Do we maybe not include that? $476, and then it goes down. If we do this divided, yeah, no, that's definitely wrong. Well, because this is a special layout for streaming, so the controls need to be kind of out of the way, and they don't really move they move away in the sense that they don't get bigger, but it's because we want the controls out of the way to the right, and the puzzle to be static in the middle. I don't know, Rangsk, actually, would you be happy if the controls are relative in the same position relative to the puzzle? I mean, you specifically asked for the controls to be left aligned, but in this case here, you imagine them to basically fill up the entire space. Because now that you mention it, if you're... I mean, we might actually scale... Because the controls, we don't want to make them infinitely big, because it doesn't make sense that the controls get bigger. Relative to them too far away from the puzzle, because that's more mouse movement. Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe we don't want... Yeah, maybe Rockred is right. Maybe we don't want the control. We just want the puzzle centered, really. And then the controls scaling as before, but obviously we need to shrink them because the puzzle is moved over to the right, we don't have a space, and then afterwards we worry about the verticality, right? So that means the X doesn't need to be minus next W, right? So if I do this and just remove that, actually, I don't know actually if that's, yeah, that makes sense. X. Yeah, I gotta be careful. If I do too many things at the same time, then I'm gonna screw myself. So for now, what if I say next y equals ct.y, and we don't change it. We do this quickly. All right, and then the x, the next width. Yeah, so currently it was the game, the width of the entire game, which is edge to edge. Yeah, so what we really want is we want the right edge of the board. So let's say board, or what was it? So BO right equals bounds BOL dot x plus bounds dot width BO right. And if we say let x be BO right for a second here, that'll screw up any margins or padding. Let's also silence these for a moment. BO right 900. X is not BO right. We need a new delta X thing, right? So it's we need to look at the existing transform, which is COT, BT, CT. What? Is the music stopped again? Somehow we left the playlist. I'm just trying to... Google, I have a playlist. I want to play through the playlist, and I want to loop when you get to the end. But for some reason, it auto-plays a song outside of the playlist after finishing a song in the playlist. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know why it does that. Anyway. X, Y. So we need to maintain the original X. So we need to calculate a delta. BO right. And if I say, we'll say controls right, CT right, right? CO or CO right. And then we have a delta between the two. So the current, so they're pretty close. Right. Wait, actually, yeah, we don't actually want to do anything there. So, if we just say ct.x. No, because now... No. C controls left. So X... So it's just that. And then we'll have our margin between them, right? So we have a left. We have a... we have border controls padding. And then we'll have a let delta x equals... So we have BO right minus CO left plus that. Right? And that's our delta x. And that's what we need to change our transform by. Delta x. Whatever, we reuse delta x 291. So CT plus delta x. Like my toes are entangled in a cable. Ooh, that's the fiber. Ah, shit. The fiber's gonna spill. Oh, I hate fiber cables. I just imagine they're super fragile, and if they get entangled in my toe and I pull on them, that they can probably get ripped. So, let's see. Excuse me. Ah, stupid fiber cable. They're tiny, freaking thin cables, and they're just lying around there. Scary. All right. Delta X. Ah, yeah. Okay. So that gets us here, which only really applies for small puzzles and very wide screens. But on a wide screen, yeah, I think this makes more sense. Okay. All right. So we got our blah blah blah. I think we're gonna get some of these variables up here. So we'll have car X, next X, delta X, and then we don't let over here. Yada yada. We'll sort out the rest later. So now we want to do the same thing for the bottom. Okay. The delta scale. So we have the width of the board. Next width. Yeah. So we'll do the same thing for these. So we'll have current width, next width, and delta width. Right. Except with width, we don't have a delta because it just affects we're just calculating the scale, right? We have delta scale. Okay, let's make sure this also works. Let's also try our other test puzzle with the larger thing. Okay. All right, so I think the next step is to bottom. Do we need to bottom align the controls rear? Yes, we do, because a lot of streamers actually want that. So let's go now back into bottom aligning the controls. And obviously I'd like to have it all in one transform rather than 2 steps. But we could do 2 steps first, and then once we figure out the math, combine them into 1 step. It's really just some kind of matrix multiplication, right? All right. So delta X. X be all right. So we kind of move this up here. Delta X. So we have the right, the left, which... wait, that goes above here. All right, so we have our X's sorted. Now, to get the bottom sorted, we need to change our translate Y. Right. So we need to figure out our delta Y. Because the vertical... I still think from bottom of puzzle is better than bottom for... Yeah, but either way, I need to be able to give it a number and say, move it to that number, right? Where the number comes from, that we can figure out after it. The problem is right now, because I'm changing the scale, the transform is within that scale. But we have numbers pre-scale and numbers post-scale, and we need to figure out where we apply which scale. And we have 2 scales, which we're multiplying together, right? We have a final scale and we have a delta scale. And that's... sorry, it's doing my head in a little bit. Well, let's find the bottom, right? So let board bottom equals bounds board element dot y, which is basically its top, plus its height. And if my music doesn't start playing properly... Geez, okay, here it is. It keeps going. Thank you very much. So the board bottom, and then here it just moves down slowly. And currently we want to find the... And the translate, obviously, the transform is the last thing, right? So that's the board bottom. And then we can do controls bottom. So, great. CO bottom, controls height. Now the problem is the scaling, right? CO bottom has already been declared. And I think it's this one. Yeah, all right. Do that. All right, now controls bottom is the same as... What? How is the board bottom and the controls bottom the same number? So controls are here and board is here. Now that don't make no sense. Unless... No, there are two different things. Board and controls. Board and controls. How are they almost the same number? What? 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 Now here I get why they're almost the same number, because they are almost in the same place. Here, I don't get it at all. So we have our board, which takes up this space, and we have our controls, which take up this space on the left. We have the Y and the controls. All right, let's look at it in more detail. God damn it. This stuff shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be hard. I think that's the most frustrating thing about it. It shouldn't be so hard. X, Y, Y56, Y192 plus height 642, height 506. How do they add out to the exact same number? Oh, because they are the same number. Hey, Shelby. Oh, because... Wait, I thought these numbers are taking the scale into consideration. Because they have different scales. So when the scale is the same... But basically, from the CSS perspective, they're always the same height. Right? In fact, they're by definition the same height. Or have the same bottom value, because this thing, these controls are actually, I think they're actually bottom aligned. Left, top, 67. Like the translate is literally designed to put them into this place, right? So they already are bottom aligned. It's just because I'm changing the scale. God damn it. But and position and CSS wise they're actually positioned from the top. Okay, all right. Ugh, my brain hurts. My brain does the hurting. So if I do this. So here they'll be bottom aligned. Here they lose their alignment because the scale changes. So we need to add something that compensates for that scale, and that scale is relative to their height. And what would that number be? What would that number be? Because the board scales from the center. That's why it has that transform 50%. Except we have changed that now with this, but we can meet deal. So I think the delta is the height of this multiplied by the scale, right? So if I say delta h is bounce.height times ct.scale, or the change in scale, delta scale. So if I do this, so delta height divided by minus times 1 minus that. So here it'll be 0. Then it'll get up to 58. Now, what I don't know is if we need to multiply that again. Delta H equals this. So if I now say next y is here, super blah blah blah. If I do this for y as well, and I say instead of saying that, I say next y is ct dot y plus delta h. So if I do this, alright, I think I finally understand the fundamental problem I was encountering. Look at that. Rock solid bottom. Man, I'm glad I don't have enough viewers for people to actually clip what I say. Okay. So that's the bottom. Now we can do the top. Right. We can get rid of a lot of this stuff. So we have our delta x. See your left, be your right, see your bottom. We're not even using either one of those. See your right, be your left. Okay. And I think next one I'm just gonna skip for now as well. And these comments are no longer valid. We don't need that. GA bottom. We're not using any of these. Right? Make sure I didn't delete anything that's functionally important. Okay. We can... Yeah. Whew. All right. So, now that we're attached to the bottom, we can now change these to push this back to the top. So now we can say, okay, so now after the translate, do we ever have a situation where we need to be smaller than this? No, because we are always scaling relative to the puzzle, right? So if I do this here, I'll have to try it with a very small puzzle and a very large rule set. Don't I have a 2x2 in here somewhere? Yes. So if we do this, normalize to localhost, and then we'll put that in here. It doesn't matter because the puzzle just gets bigger. And we might want to have a minimum right margin here as well. Yeah. So, in fact, the margin to the puzzle is quite large, but I think that's just the default. So, if we do this, we'll have, what's our margin? CO margin 32. So we can blah, blah, blah. But we need it before this. Next width. Current width. Next width. Plus that. Minus CO margin. And that should give it a margin on the right side. Plus margin. Ooh. Boom. Yeah. So now we have a margin on the right and the left. Cool. And we can make that margin potentially configurable. Potentially. So let us find the new delta top. Let controls top equals bounds co.el dot y. That should now move down as we're you know, messing around with the scales and all that. Ooh, has already been declared. All right. Good on you. Good on you, mate. No. Uh-huh. Where am I actually using that? Yeah, I don't actually need that. I think that's fine. Controls top. Here we go. Boom. So CO total is 500. Gets smaller, and then we're here. We do the same thing here. Smaller. We'll go here. Oop. 186. Gets larger. Small. All right. So that's the amount that we can change the max height off. All right. So if we have max height like that. All right. And we can modify that by that much. Okay. So let next max height equals, so we'll do a parse int, parse float really, of that, plus if I do this, okay, so let's do this first. Let max height equal, we'll do that. Nope, we'll do that. Then we'll just put that in here, that there, and then we'll do next max height is this. Right? 405. So if we set the max height at this point, the problem with that is it'll recursively affect our scaling, I think. Because it'll affect something, right? Max height. Next max height. So eventually, if our top becomes 0... Yeah, So if I... Yeah, like, we're gonna have a problem here. So if I do style.max height, and then I'll do next max height, pixels, right? And then as we scale it, it'll messes around. It'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, but it doesn't actually work. Well, it works because it's a max height. It'll get larger and larger and larger, which doesn't make any freaking sense, right? We'll actually need to figure out what the actual height is. We don't want to just add to the max height. Yeah, we don't want to add to the max height. We want to find the actual height. So... Yeah, 1 second. If I do bounds that dot height, what does that look like relative to max height? Actually, let's do the max height too. The max height is that. Height is 97. Max height is 224. Does that mean that this is the puzzle rules? Are they 97 high or 224 high? And 224 doesn't make sense either. Except maybe because of the scale. Scale 0.43. Yeah. Height is 90. Height is 97. Okay, and here 72, 224. 72, 224. 72, 82. Now, if I do the new the max height setting here, which we are doing. What do we end up with? 2 to 4. The max height goes to this. Max height will keep getting bigger because height won't increase. But we still want this to be top aligned. Yeah, so let's not worry about the max height right now. Let's move it up first. Because I'm just realizing we want to top align it first. And then we can max height it out to make more of the rules visible. If we have the space, right? And it's not just this, it's the whole controls info panel. So it's this part. And CI will have some stuff. So we'll have bounds CI. And we'll have, do we have a transform of this? We'll need to look at the transform here as well. Let's forget the top for a second. All right, so we are not getting a transform out of it because it currently doesn't have a transform, which is great because then we can just do whatever we want. Right. It's also not in and of itself scaled, so all we need to do is apply some sort of delta to it. So, excuse me. Actually, I'm gonna go to the bathroom because it's affecting my ability to think clearly. So I will be right back. Boom. No. On break? Yeah, I'm gonna be right back. Alright, I'm back. Alright, we're really close now. I feel it in my bones. Okay. 1 sec. Toby, just... Toby. Ask me to open the door, and then you don't go outside. I know you want to hang out with me, but I'm still streaming. I don't think Toby likes it when I'm streaming. Okay. Alright. Where are we at? So, we have the control info element here, and we need to transform it up enough that its X... X 914. 914 seems too high up. So if we set its transform, I feel like we're gonna have a problem because of the scale. But we can just do this, right, for now. So we don't have a scale. We have nothing on the Y. And I guess we can just do translate X then. Boom, 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 boom. And then, is it Y? See a top? Oh, wait. Okay. Wait. So, wait a second. By default, it's aligned to the top. No, it's not aligned to the top by default either. Because I keep forgetting this has been transformed, and I don't know if the bounds... 207, 207... So if I say... I'll transform it by... bounce that... dot y... negative... then it'll be translate y does the transform shouldn't affect any calculations, so we need to multiply that by delta scale. So -1 times delta scale times -1 times delta scale. Delta scale. Delta scale. It only kicks in here. X, Y, 99, CO top. CO top. If I transform it by the negative of the yada yada, right? If I transform it by that much. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. But then here, controls top. Controls top. Do I care about the controls top? Yes, because they're transformed. So we need to counteract that. So if I do negative this times that, and then it'll counteract that. Oh, my poor brain. Do we need to take delta scale into consideration here? If we're not delta scaling... If we're not delta scaling, it works, minus the scale for the top margin, right? So if we then... Ooh. If we're taking delta scale into consideration... It'll probably have to be 1 over. Alright, and now the top margin is scaled. Ah! So we need to unscale this top margin. The thing is, right now it goes basically to the top of where the controls would be if we wouldn't have moved them down. But the controls are being scaled now, so we need to actually adjust for the change in the top margin space. Trying to think how we do that. Do we multiply delta scale minus... What is the top margin there? The top margin would be the difference between CO top. Wait, what if I do CO top before we do any of this stuff? Like if I do this right here. Yeah, let's just do this. So don't go crazy. So it starts with 354 and then becomes 627 and then 353 350. The problem is it's not top aligned by default either. It is bottom aligned relative to the puzzle. So the controls are... They are already transformed to be bottom aligned. So if I disable the transform, where do they align to? They align to the top of the puzzle board, which has its margins there. Is that really what we're doing? Flex left top. Oh, because it is positioned via top, not by a transform. Ugh. Oh, my brain. I mean, we're so close now. I guess it wouldn't be too hard to try to reverse engineer whatever margin shenanigans are happening there. It's like a little freaking sine curve there. Problem is we have two scales which are interacting, and I feel if I try to figure that out without fully understanding it just by guessing, I'm gonna drive myself loco. And I don't want to go loco. So if we take that scale out of the thing. What are we missing there? What are we missing? We're like almost there. But then not quite. Almost there, but not quite. CO top. CO top. Minus... Do we want to get our top position first? Because maybe we need to do this before the translate. No, it's still crisscrossy scaled. Man, I know I've experienced this before, and I kind of sort of recall roughly what it is, but I don't know exactly. And it's basically because you're scaling things inside things that are scaled, and they're kind of And because we're not scaling relative to 0, we have this 40 pixel offset here. And then one of these things doesn't. And then the offset, because of the way the scale changes, the offset becomes really small. Because it's like, something is getting scaled that shouldn't be getting scaled. My brain. This is normally what a game engine takes care of for you. And it sucks that I can't have the full control over it, where I just tell it, hey, you know, I want you to be on this. Like, I cannot selectively pull something out of its hierarchy. I mean, I could. Like, I could pull it literally out and then manually replace it in the DOM and then position it perfectly. If I change... If I, for a second, if I make delta H 0, right? And I don't do this for a sec. Right. So it is whatever it is, right? And the CO top is 154. And the bounds of the element are 154. So if I now pull that out like that, do I need to set the transform to 0 before I calculate the bounds? No. No, it shouldn't. I shouldn't have to. Because the transform isn't taken into consideration by stuff. Right, like, this is always in the correct place. Then why is the top changing? Because everything is changing with the scale of things. And why is it not completely zeroed out? CO top is 191. And bounce this is 46. And if I multiply this by ct.scale, and CT stands for controls transform, right? No. Bounds dot y like that. Bounds y, so 191. If I multiply it by a scale, it's smaller. So if I say this is the new top, then how does that work? If I divide it by CT scale, okay, then it gets stuck to the top, but it'll bounce because of we don't reset the transform before we do all the other stuff. So if we do this at the top and do that and reset the transform, but the problem is the transform shouldn't affect the other positioning. So now that should be rock solid. But it'll be rock solid this thing, right? So, and we can change this to 1 over. Like that. So we have a couple of factors. We have this scale. We have that scale. We have the -1. And then we have the actual value. Except this value is relative to the screen top, but we want is relative to the board top. So we'll do that minus that. And by BO actually mean the game. GA, I believe. If I do this... No. Bounce dot... Oh, Y. And that should take us to the tippy toppy of that. Now, the board... The board is BO. Maybe that's what we want to align with all whatever margin it has. So if I do this instead, BO.Y here, so instead of these two, we'll just do that one. And now, BO.Y. Let's output these two. Let's not output these two. Let's see what we get. So now we have bounce. Where is that getting output from? Oh, up here. Why? That's just confusing the hell out of me. Hey, babe. So our Y is 55. Our CI, that's controls info. One sec. Controls info. Let's output these separately. I think I'm getting tired and I'm getting super confused-icated. And then the game Y. Let's output them all three, right? So the board is at 55. So the board is this. The top of the game element is 40. So that's, we have 15 margin roughly, or whatever. Whatever makes the board being positioned slightly different. Okay. So instead of the game element, we want to subtract the board element. Like that. Right? Okay. Yes, now it's aligned with the top of the board, and the difference here comes because the board actually has some padding around it. But that should be correct for boards with weird things, right? So it should always... Ooh. Oh no, but the board top doesn't take into consideration the things above it. Ah, my brain. Oh shoot. One sec. We actually need to take into consideration the board's other stuff. So we have bottom height, left, right, top, width, height 323, top, bottom, top, Y, top, bottom. Top is Y. 102. 102. Top. 145. Y. 145. Oh man, I've had to calculate this so many times, and that's why every time I tried to update the layout system, I ended up giving up on it after a couple of days because it is brutal. I don't know why that little piece of complexity breaks my skull so badly. I have a block. Like, I'm so happy that I figured it out the first time, but now I'm always struggling each time when I'm trying to sort it out. Resize. So we have resize, and we have ways and means of figuring out the margins. And in fact, on best of, I think the screenshot tool does that. And in fact, I think I made a helper function that I wouldn't have to do it again. Yeah, margins, options height, options, get puzzle dims, SVG render, get content bounds. Is that valid? Let's see. So if I do framework.app.svg get content bounds, let's see how that compares. Nothing compares. All right, so excuse me, I am losing it a little bit. I haven't slept much. So that should get us the actual edges of what one would consider to be the puzzle. So here now the top is negative 209. So, and if I go onto this one, it shouldn't be so drastic. Yeah, because here the top is 0, the width and height are 576, 576, while top 50, height 406. Now the difference is that involves scaling and this doesn't. But this gives us the unscaled margins. So let content bounds equals this. And now we should be able to figure out where the puzzle actually starts vis-a-vis all the other stuff. Okay. Better unmark all of these again and compare them, look at them, and see what we got. So, controls info is at 170. Board is at 146. And we're doing a transforming here. But content bounds give us a top of minus this, right? So we want to add plus content bounds dot top times ct dot scale times not ct bt dot scale, or divide it potentially, or subtract it potentially. Oh no. Divided. Okay, that looks like it should be a multiplication. Oh, but we need to multiply it by that scale and the other scale. So if I subtract that here, it feels like it's double, right? So if I now multiply it by ct.scale, what do we get? Ooh, it's so close. No, that's definitely less right. Maybe this was more. Maybe this is more right. No. Maybe these three terms aren't quite right. So we have, let's see what we have. Left, right, top, minus 209. So we have y minus top times all these scales. Wait. We need to compare this width with this width. So if we that'll tell us what the scale factor is, right? So we'll say dot height, dot height, and then content bounds dot height. And then the ratio between these two, if I spell this right. So if I do this, right? And then if I output the different scales, ct.scale, bt.scale. And then we'll do this. What do we get? 1.17. What if we invert these? What if we invert these? What? 0.85. It's not that long. It's not long. And 506, 593. I was hoping the ratio between them would give us one of these two scales. Ah, maybe because it includes margins or something. Like they're close-ish. 7983, 1.168. So it's definitely related to this one. The controls shouldn't actually come into this at all. Right, because this... Ah, but we've messed with stuff at this point. Maybe we have to do this before we've messed with stuff. So if we go here... Content bounds, content bounds, content bounds. Do that. Reading cannot read properly. Blah, 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 blah. Bow. Bow, bow, bow. Before we mess with anything, 0.659 pt.scale. ct.scale we don't need. 0.6. No, it's still rough. I'm just gonna output the bounds again. Oh man, I feel like we're so close. And of course, I probably would get faster if I actually thought about it and did it properly instead of just guessing. If I change the scale of this to 1, and then look at these numbers, what would that look like? So if I go here, change this to 1, oh, and now I can say this and get the bounds of this. I think I have to reset it again. Go here, we find the board, change the scale to 1, and now output this, right? Top minus 64. Why? Oh, okay, positioning. Fine. Height 608. And if I do this, do we get anything close to that? 608. So the 608 here already includes some kind of margin. So if I do 608 minus 576, we get our margin. It's the margin. It's the margin. The difference is the margin. The margin is added to these numbers before the scaling. Bounds, content bounds. So if I do this and I subtract 32, and that's why the scale was slightly off. If I do this, I get 0. Or do I add it? No, this is the thing that's scaled. I need to add it on this side because that's the thing that's not scaled, and the 32 is not scaled. So if I do this... Yes! Okay. Okay. So, these two relate by the scale number. Okay. Right. And all I'm doing this for is to have the system provide me with the already existing calculation for content bounds. Now, I don't know if it's obligatory that I do it at the start of all of this. Don't think we need this anymore. And we can take all of this, and probably that calculation actually would still work down here as well. Right. And now, we don't need to involve control scale at all. This has nothing to do with control scale. We multiply it by that scale. And now... that should work rock solid. And then if we unlock delta scale, does it still work? Ciao guys, see you later. Huh?
I'll be out for half an hour.
Okay. I'll finish off soon. Alright. Alright. Now the only issue is that the margin at the top... does it change with the scale? I'm not sure. Okay, the other issue is right now that the bottom no longer is where it's supposed to be. So if I stop doing this for a moment, did we maybe just disable that? So do that, do that. Okay, so we've disabled the bottom adjustments, which happen where? Delta H here, right? Okay, so now we can re-enable this test. Okay. Okay, and does it work with our odd-shaped puzzle? No. Damn it. Content pounds, the top is minus 209. And on this one, the top is 0. Content bounds dot top times BT scale. Height 593, height 576. Bounds Y. Top minus 209. Minus compound. It's 200 times. It's negative, so maybe I just inverted it here? No. Oh, man. So if I just take this out, we'll be aligned with the top edge of the puzzles. In a... I mean, even that doesn't look quite right, does it? We're aligning with the top edge of the puzzle, plus its padding and margin. Problem is, the top edge of the puzzle here, content bound dots top times BT scale, or divided by BT scale. Yeah, maybe I've got it inverted here because it's too large. So I mean, but then the scale is... oh no, the scale could be larger than 1, right? No, but then it changes that. I do this. Just output all these numbers. Do we see anything useful? 1.123. So it's large. No, it becomes smaller. But it's negative. It gets bigger as it scales down. So that doesn't make sense. So we do want to multiply it. The direction it was moving wasn't correct. So top minus 209. So we need to subtract it. Alright, so. And this does something, but. Content bounds. Top minus 209. So the top is fairly large. Height is 593. So the top being. This area being less than half of this isn't quite right. Top minus 209. One second. If that's not right. Get content bounds. Content bounds. BB left min padding. BB right plus minus min padding. BB width. Is it a difference in the padding? I don't think so. BB. Word bounds. Width height. Get puzzle dims. Is that enough to find our margins? Dimensions, image type. Because we are showing the padding here somewhere. Trim space. It's option trim. Find trim. Trim. Are we relying on the underlying PNG algorithm to do that for us? Let's just try it. So if we go for the import export screenshot. What about the background? Advanced add background image. Margins top 224. That's not this one. Wait, what? BG image, margins, margin top, dims. Where do dims come from? Get dimensions. Get dimensions does what? View box split. Margin left. Width, mouse left, minus calls, dot times, yes. Oh my god. So here we're doing the full calculation, huh? If I do that, whoa. If I put that function in here somewhere. So if I say constants, get dimensions. Something like that. Right? I think there's no reference to this or anything like that, right? And if we look at this like that, and I do this. Get dimensions, width, height, margin bottom, margin left, margin right, margin top. 224, content bounds, top, 209. if I look at it before I do anything else, and I'll just put that in here, does that look different? So get dimensions, content bounds. Get dimensions, margin top 224, top minus 209. It's a weird number though. Oh, but because it's... The thing is, the 224, the 209 are so close that I don't think it's good enough. So what if we do let dims equals get dimensions like that, right? And then we do dims dot margin top times BTO scale. Dims dot margin top. Dims dot get dimension margin top. Should be 224, right? So if I do that, that should get me 224 multiplied by something, right? Get dimensions. Ah, wait, yeah. Get dimensions, margin top. Yeah, that shouldn't get changed. 142. Now, by subtracting it, we're going down that much. If I add it, we're going up that much. Why is it that much? Is it because of this? If I do this times that. No. Damn it. Oh, you tease. You tease, because we're dividing it by this afterwards. Multiply. Should we have this as a separate term? Like that. Like if I don't include this term. And let's reset delta scale to 1. Like, that's weird, right? Why don't we have that by default? Like, this is strange. Oh, the tip of my tip got stuck in my ear. I feel like I'm really close, but I'm also not seeing the full picture. So at this point, it should be aligned with some aspect of some, but it's kind of like in the middle of this upper space that is above the puzzle. All right, Rangsk, take care. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna solve this today, but I'm pretty close. I think I can suss it out eventually. Yeah. It's just, my God. That's why I always want to start over. Oh man, there's so many little freaking details. Like the SVG, the origin of it isn't well defined and all that. If I do this. Oh, wait. I applied the code. So like this, that seems to work pretty fine. And if I add this, that should be fine because it's just 0. I think. Yeah. Now here, it's no longer fine. So if I do this, put that in here. So 156. 156. Now, if we don't move it... Ah, wait, the transform is set to nothing. CI element is set to nothing, right? Is margin top enough? Is that all we really care about? Height 384. Because that is also a little suspicious, right? Because here, height is 593. So bt.scale is what? Because it should be related to each other, right? By scale, 568. So height, 593. If I say 593 multiplied by 0.56 gets me 332. Do this. So if we take the height here, 593. Oh, no. Damn it. So we'll take 593 multiplied by 0.56. We get 332. 384. Is that off by too much? Wait, we don't actually care about content bounds, do we? So let's look at bounds. Bounds of BO element, of the board element. How does that compare? So once again, we are at, if I look at height, hike, is that really misspelled? Are you kidding me? Hike, oh my god. Hike. Is that breaking anything? Height. Is it misspelled here as well? Now, am I using height as a comparison? Jesus Christ. Criminy. Yeah. So what do we have now? Okay. Nah. All right. 314 width. 314 times. So now the width here of bounds is 314. No way does that relate to 384 in any kind of in any kind of multiplication. But does the width here include the margins? Margin left 160, margin right, I don't know. Let's compare it here, where we don't have that kind of bollocks going on. So it's 576, and bounds we're width 509. So if we multiply 576 times 0.838, which is the current scale, we get 482, which is within the margin of padding of width. Because width here, I think, includes padding. So that could be like plus 32 or whatever. Or 32 plus, like, could be this plus 32 times the thing, and we get 509, which is exactly that. Okay. So the bounds value relates via the scale to the dimensions. So if I multiply dimensions by the scale, actually I'd want to divide by the scale then. Right? No, it looks right. What if I subtract that? What if I multiply that? Oh, man. Do I... Delta scale should be 1. Yeah, it's fixed at 1, so we don't have to worry about that. Translate y. Multiply that by scale. Do I then also multiply it by this? It's not like completely off. Or do I divide it by 60 scale? Oh, wait. Okay. This is rock solid. So that looks like some sort of fixed value right now. No, not multiplied. Plus. Did I? Alright, I'm just reversing something here. I'm adding a fixed offset. Or am I? Because if I don't do this... Wait, what? Times 0. Actually, let's just not do this for a sec. I am really confused. I might be just barking up the wrong tree. Yeah, this doesn't do anything. And neither does this, because that's what it looked like when I didn't have this in there. Do we have to play that game again? We have to ask the question, where do we want to be? So let console.log top of board. So that should be a bounds board Y roughly. Ah, oh, jeez. Top of board 244. Top of board 244. And if I go here, top of board 53. Top of board 166, blah blah blah. And then here, top of board more or less stays the same, except for the scaling of the margin. Now here, top of board is pretty big, but it should be close to like 50 or whatever, right? So if we now take that and subtract our margin top multiplied by TT to scale, does that resemble what we're looking for? Minus, it goes into the negative. Now here, the margin is small, so it's not going to make much of a difference. So these two numbers should basically be the same. Ah, but they're not. Wait, what? They're not? I thought here... Oh, no. Yeah, no. We have the 16 margin. Okay, fair enough. And then here... Margin top 224. 224. That's, yeah, that we cannot go in the negative. Shouldn't be able to. So I'm not calculating something right here. Because 224 multiplied by that, 224 times 0.465 is 104. So we do get a negative value here. What? top of board is at 52. We get to 40, which is roughly the bottom of that when we subtract that. So this is correct. Is it because the board has already been moved by whatever we did up here? So if I do top of board first, is that gonna work better? Is that the problem? Top of board. -8. PT scale margin or bounds. Bounds. And here, let's make the window the same size as well. Less confusion. Oh. So, do that here, do that there. So here we end up, I don't know why we end up with 2 resizes, but okay. 49, 599, 40. So the 40 is smaller than the 49, sure. But here we end up with -21. So margin top is 224, multiplied by 0.584. We're still more than half of that, and we're subtracting that from that. That makes no sense. That makes no frickin' sense. The top of the board is at 109. Bound. As calculated by bounds. Alright, we have to be a bit careful because I think bounds doesn't worry about the theoretical location of it all. So maybe we shouldn't be looking at bounds at all to get the top position. Maybe we should be looking straight at the transform. So because BT, it tells us how it is transformed. It doesn't care what the size of it is. It just says where the positioning is and what the scale is. And with that and the dimensions, maybe it makes more sense where we're going to end up. The only problem is the transforms are all relative to the built-in CSS positioning, which centers the whole thing vertically, which means we don't, short of using bounds, we have no physical reference where the damn thing is. Ah, this hurts my brain so much. The problem is bounds interacts with the actual drawn elements. So depending on the size of the digit, the bounds will be slightly different, right? And we don't actually want to deal with that. But we also don't actually care about absolute values here. We care about something relative. So we could just use the height and the margin top instead of the other stuff. So we could just say get dimensions.height plus margin top times scale, and then basically half of that, right? Because the other half goes downwards. So 0.5 times. And so far it looked like we were off by roughly half, right? We overjumped by roughly double. That's what it seemed like. Now the problem is we don't just want to move this relatively. We do want to move it absolutely. We want to take into consideration where this thing currently is, which is a problem. But that just means we need a minimum value, right? 348. Top of board, 348. No, that's not the top of the board. That's the offset, right? And that's why... One second. Because we've just moved the damn thing down, haven't we? So if I don't move it down, where does it end up? No, that's the X. If I don't move the height... No, we're not moving it down. This time we actually do want to move it up. Ah, my brain! My brain! God damn it, I probably need a break. I'll be honest with you guys. We have the board. And the board... It has these big chunkin margins. Because it's centered within its margins. It's actually redistributing the margins to be centered. So it takes the top and the bottom margin. So basically, if we don't want to align it with the top of the board, but with the top of the clues, but the actual positioning on the page redistributes the top and bottom clues and evenly spaces out the boards to center board. And I did that at the time because otherwise the visual weight was completely uneven. So if that's true, more guessing, it means we could take the ratio of the top and bottom margins, take half of that, and that's the actual amount we need to move it by, relative to the top, which I think we already had. So first of all, I gotta make sure that whatever we had prior is still functional, because I've messed around with it so much. So I think we still have the bottom alignment functional, right? So this is the part where we wanted to do the top alignment. Basically like that. CT scale, bounce.y, board.y. Is that the thing that's supposed to work? Yeah. Except, obviously on this one, it kind of doesn't. Does it change it at all? Like, this doesn't do anything? CI minus BO. 27. It's quite small. Does it change? A little bit. So we still need to look at the dimensions. But now, instead of just taking them outright, we're gonna take half of the sum of the top and bottom. So we'll do dims.margin top plus dims.margin bottom. And that'll get us 240. Margin, yeah. And then we'll do 0.5 times bt.scale times those two. And that gets us an 84, which looks much better. Ah, is that it? I mean, this looks still weird, but I think it's because of a different scaling in margins. And now if I bring delta scale back into it... My god, this is such a mess. Am I going to understand any of this tomorrow? Okay. It could be right, because we have this fixed margin here. And the way... This could still be the same fixed amount. Like, if we don't scale that relative margin... Like, if I ignore that... I'm literally... Right, yeah, it's the exact same distance from the top of the screen. And so is the puzzle, but the puzzle is a smaller distance than this, because this has some sort of built-in margin, I think. Alright, this is very close to what we need. Like, I don't even know if I need to change that margin part. I think it's basically the 16 pixels hard-coded or something. So I might have to just literally subtract 16 in here. Or add 16. But then we might have to re-add the 16 in it with the other scale factor. Oh man, I don't even know. Bounce CI minus bounce BO. Board. Or we go to the game one. Hmm. Oh, but then no, because then we wanted it board relative. Okay, no, because then this isn't board relative. We wanted it board relative. Okay. Plus half. PT scale. Do we need to do that as well? Is that the final factor? Minus? Oh my. Ooh. It gets pushed up. Is it because of that 16? The fixed 16 margin? This looks weird. There's something... It's almost there. But that's why, man, I think I need some sort of UI which lets me manually resize elements and then have the other elements react accordingly. Because you see, it's like the 16 was removed, but then I feel like we need to put the 16 back in. At a different scale level somewhere. So if I take the 16 out here... Yeah, it doesn't actually... If I make this 32... If I add 32... If I subtract 64 because I multiplied by... Like I need 32 top and bottom. Ooh. Yeah, you see now the top of the red is perfectly aligned. Almost. With the top of the black line. So if I do this, but here it's still, it comes down a little bit when it gets scaled. If I take that out, oops. It's the last thing I need is to lose all that. So this is already multiplied there. We're not multiplying it by delta. Wait a second. Can we integrate these? So if I do this, minus 0.5 times, forget that, do that, and then delta scale is also being integrated. Minus, multiplied, plus, because the minus is up there. I think that's it. I think it was because of the delta scale. Because that was where it was changing. Okay, so then the final piece of the puzzle is to change the max height when we have the available space, right? So what we now need to know is the delta between this part and this part. Like, how big could it be? And then we can adjust the max height for that. And that's basically the height. So, one second. Let me get rid of the log spam for a sec here. And I think we can calculate that right at the start, because it's just the relative difference in the heights, right? So we can do something like, yeah, forget top of board here. BT get transform, we don't need that. Right, so that should still do the same thing. Right. And now, what we can do is control height is bounds of control element dot height. Right? 324. And then the final height will be the puzzle height. So the board height. Right? And if I do this after, so height delta. So how much bigger is the board than the puzzle? 87. Okay. And if I now say that shouldn't change towards the bottom, because all we've messed around is with translates, except for the scaling. So here changed a little bit. 126, 150 to 258. 258. Height delta 150 to 258. That seems a lot. Although we do have space. Like, I could imagine this to be able to be 250 higher, wider, whatever. Okay. So if I now get the max height, so if I do this, and I just output this. Now, we might have to multiply it by scale, right? That's fine. So, the max height is 224. 224. And the new max height should be the minimum of those two. So new next max height should be math.max, the higher of the two, or the smaller of the two. No, the higher of the two, because we want to expand it. Ah, but the problem is... Let me think. If we take... If max height is higher than the height delta... the problem is the max height doesn't tell us what the actual height is. Hey guys! You know what? I'm gonna leave that for the next one, because... you know, this is almost like a side quest, you know what I mean? To do increase rules max height to fill available vertical space. All right, I think I'm gonna call it here. Hey Rangsk, hey GC. Yeah, I gotta get going. It's almost 10 here, and Toby and Gretcha's back, and it is time to do dinner and sleeping and all that. But I'm pretty happy where we're at the moment. I think, let's just see. Nope. Let's just see how that looks with, like, okay, so for example, full screen, nice and big, whoops. Ultra wide. So it's now, the puzzle is always exactly centered. Obviously, this will probably screw portrait mode. So I'll definitely have to limit this to landscape. For portrait, I'd have to do completely different things. Yeah. It'll bottom align the controls relative to the puzzle. It'll top align the rules relative to the puzzle. And it'll shrink the controls in case that we don't have enough vertical space. Horizontal space. So you see, as horizontal space gets smaller, it'll shrink the controls according to its existing scale algorithm. Which currently, as you see there, technically these buttons could be larger. So that might be a separate revision. But that's definitely separate. So if I bring that in here, and for a regular puzzle, it'll look like this. We haven't done the max height adjustment yet. That'll be next. But like this, the puzzle is always in a predictable position. The controls are always bottom right next to the puzzle at the same distance. And the rules are always top right next to the puzzle at the same distance. So maybe this will do the trick. And as right now, this is literally just a little bit of code you can just paste in the console. Like you could make this a scriptlet. But I'll probably have this as a sort of experimental. I'll add this as a feature, experimental. So like with a drop down with like different layout modes. But I'll use this as a sort of way of building like a little toolbox. And then in the future, what I really want is to be able to just grab it and drag things around and say, oh, attach this to the left, dock it to the right, you know, that kind of thing. And have everything sort of adjust as automatically as possible. You know, some solvers might like this. Like for example, the original layout, if I just refresh this on an ultra wide screen, you know, I can imagine that to be weird. Like if you have a super wide screen, although it's not completely left aligned, it's just kind of weirdly off-centered because it basically splits the screen into two halves with a puzzle on the left half and the controls on the right. Basically with the idea that you want it to touch on the left eventually. I don't know how that came about, to be honest. All right, that's it for me today. And I think this week I'm going to really dig into those issues with the iOS rendering because that's getting a little bit annoying. But I still suspect it's literally a WebKit bug. And it's possible that iOS already issued an update. I haven't really had a chance to look into it just yet because it only came about like yesterday, I think. Yeah, GDC, I'd appreciate it. Especially since things I do here might break scripts like that, so it'll be good for me to be aware. So at least I can let people know, hey, if your script broke, you know, your stuff you can do. Anyway, that's it for today. I gotta take care of some things. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Take care. Have a good one, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.